A useless person who doesn't do housework or cook deserves a divorce. I'm going to demand $55,300 in damages.
Looking down at me, bedridden and sick, John suddenly declared that. Divorce? Just when he came home suddenly? What do you mean by useless for not doing any housework or cooking and demanding $55,300 in damages? Is he out of his mind? Despite the fact that the stress from John made me ill. I was boiling with rage at his outrageous treatment, but I couldn't move as I wanted, and couldn't even get up. I thought, I didn't want to let things go as John wished. With that, I forced a smile while lying down. Fine by me. John's face was filled with astonishment, not expecting me to agree to the divorce so easily. There's no turning back now. I'll make him regret all he's done to belittle me. My name is Emily. I work at an IT company called Lyrax, and I'm turning 38 this year. Though I mostly work from home, my days are incredibly busy yet fulfilling. It's often tough, but the work is rewarding too. My classmates from school are often amazed at how hard I work, but they respect me for it, which feels great. 2 years ago, I started a family. I married John, my husband. I met John 4 years ago at a pub in a bustling district, after dinner with a friend. After dinner, as we were walking to the station, someone called out from behind, "Excuse me." I turned around to see who it was. A man dressed in a shirt and jacket, looked like a capable businessman. He said, "You left this at the restaurant," and handed me my smartphone, which I had forgotten. Thank you so much for bringing it to me. No problem. I'm glad I made it in time. Would you like to grab a drink now? The man, relieved to have returned my phone, then surprisingly invited me for a drink. Shocked, I glanced at my friend, about to part ways at the station. My friend encouraged me to go with a smile. If you don't mind, then yes. That day, I had made a mistake at work, which was unusual for me, and had a lot to get off my chest. My friend had to meet someone, so it was perfect timing that he approached me. After parting with my friend, I went to a nearby bar with a man. That man is now my husband, John. At the bar, John and I vented about work and quickly hit it off. By the time we left, we felt as comfortable as best friends, and he asked for my contact. So we began to communicate, started dating, and married 2 years later. It was a surprisingly smooth progression, even surprising to myself. It was a late marriage, but lucky for me, who was always focused on work. That's what I thought at the time. Emily, could you get me a beer? While relaxing on the sofa messing with his phone, John asked me this, making me sigh again. How many times has it been? I've lost count. 2 years into our marriage, John's sloppiness was too much. John, who works at a well-known megabank, always boasts about being an elite banker, claiming that those who work are the most important. Before marriage, I had no idea he thought so highly of himself. I understood he was proud of his work, but hearing him constantly assert it was exhausting. Enough, I'm busy. Buy it yourself. As I was working, I couldn't run errands for John and brushed off his request. Then John scratched his head in annoyance and said, "How can you be busy with remote work? I was slaving away at the office all day and I'm exhausted." Remote work isn't always easy. Even when I said that, he retorted with sarcasm. Yeah, right, as if. You can take breaks anytime you want. I grew weary of arguing back, silently stood up from the chair and reluctantly went out to shop. Here's your beer, I bought it. John, without thanking me for running the errand or even paying for the beer, silently took it and immersed himself in his smartphone again. This felt less like a marriage and more like a master and slave relationship. I wondered why John even married me. Why did I marry John? I sighed to myself. Not to mention he never helps with the housework despite both of us working. I once suggested sharing household chores, to which he scoffed. Share housework? Huh, don't joke. You're always home, it's only natural for you to do it. But I do go to the office sometimes. I can't always do all the chores. You only go occasionally, right? Just hire a maid for those days. Huh. John was adamantly against doing any housework, never agreeing to it. He usually mocks me, saying, "You have it easy with your job," or "Hurry up with the chores." But at night, he would frequently demand physical intimacy. However, there was no sign of us having children. If there was a reason, it was probably on my side. I knew that it became harder for women to conceive in their late 30s. I thought if we don't have children, we should just enjoy our married life, but John seemed dissatisfied. He disdainfully said,
"You can't even have kids. You're really useless."
I was infuriated. He was of no help around the house himself. I doubted whether he was really so efficient at work. A truly capable person would manage their personal affairs well and easily handle housework. I had my doubts about John's work performance. Speaking of doubts, for several months, John's return home had been noticeably late. I didn't understand the busy periods at a bank, but when I mentioned, "You've been busy lately," he only replied,
"Unlike you, my work is tough."
When he continued to come home after midnight for months, even I, who was not quick to suspect, found it suspicious. It was only natural to suspect infidelity. One day, as usual, John came home late at night and collapsed at the entrance. Approaching to see what was wrong, he seemed very drunk and unable to stand, his eyes closed, nearly losing consciousness. I sighed and approached to untie his necktie when John mumbled something.
"Wait for me, Rose. Just a little longer, okay?"
I was startled to hear my husband whisper in a sweet, melting voice, "Rose? Who's that?" I couldn't tell if it was a drunken slip or sleep talk, but John started snoring and fell asleep as is. Growing suspicious, I installed many cameras throughout the house. Next week, I'll be away on a business trip for 2 days, leaving the house empty. If John is cheating, my absence would be the perfect opportunity for him to bring his lover home. While there's no certainty he'll bring someone home, if he does, I'll have evidence to confront him. With that thought, I installed the cameras. A week later, pretending nothing was amiss, I told John, "Well then, I'm off on my trip." He waved goodbye with a smile. He had a huge smile on his face, which infuriated me. Returning from the trip 2 days later, I immediately checked the camera footage. As expected, there was John with his lover, intimately engaged. Feeling nauseous, I couldn't watch the whole footage, but it was clear evidence of his infidelity. Clenching my fist as if to crush the camera, I was filled with rage. Unforgivable. The extent of his mockery was beyond belief. Does he think he can do this and get away with it? Confirming John's infidelity filled me with anger and sorrow. His constant berating like,
"The meal's awful,"
or
"The floor's dirty,"
only added to my stress. I pondered when to bring up divorce, but lost the right moment due to a sudden increase in work. Eventually juggling work and household chores, my body couldn't keep up. One day I suddenly collapsed with a high fever. I had to take the day off from work. Of course, I couldn't do any housework either. John knew I was sick from the morning, but left silently for work and returned around 6 in the evening. It was much earlier than usual. He then came to where I was bedridden. The smell of alcohol hit my nose, making me feel sick. Without a care for my condition, John glared.
"A useless person who doesn't do housework or cook deserves a divorce. I'm going to demand $55,300 in damages."
Looking down at me bedridden, John suddenly declared that. Divorce? He just came home and started saying this so suddenly? What does he mean by useless for not doing any housework or cooking? And $55,300 in damages? Is he insane? All because of the stress from him, I got sick. I was boiling with anger at his outrageous treatment, but unable to move as I wished, I couldn't even get up. I refused to let things go as John wished. With that resolve, I forced a smile while lying down. Fine by me. Surprised by my easy acceptance of divorce, astonishment spread across John's face. There was no turning back now. I was determined to make him regret what he had done. A few days later, when I fully recovered, the first thing I did was to get documents related to divorce agreement. After signing my part of the divorce agreement, I waited for John's return.
"I'm home."
That day, John returned around 10 p.m., reeking of alcohol. He also smelled of a perfume I had never noticed before. As usual, I confronted him with the divorce papers. I want a divorce. In a low voice, I said that, and John snatched the divorce papers with a
"Finally free."
Whether it was sarcasm towards me or himself, John smirked. He could have filed for divorce himself, if he wanted it so badly, but it seemed he wanted me to initiate it. I was fed up with his attitude.
I'll claim the damages. Haha.
Pathetic that John thought he could claim damages after cheating. I silently watched the divorce proceedings unfold without saying anything. The next day, I submitted the divorce agreement, successfully ending my life as John's slave. The end of our marriage felt anticlimactic, but just divorcing John wasn't enough for me to forgive him. I decided to take action to make John regret his own actions. Over a few days, I packed up all my belongings in the house. I decided to leave this house. This was a second-hand apartment we bought when we got married 2 years ago, but I wasn't too attached to it, so I easily chose to leave.
Don't ever come back here. Huh.
As I packed my things, John watched with a delightful laugh. He probably plans to live here with his lover once I'm gone. The whole idea is nauseating, but from the footage of the hidden camera, it seems John is quite infatuated with his lover. Ignoring John's words, I left the house with my suitcase. Phew! At least now I can escape John's verbal abuse. I sighed with relief. Then I headed straight to a real estate agency and asked for a rental property I could move into immediately. I found a somewhat small, reasonably priced, well-maintained apartment. I quickly signed the lease for the apartment. I'll move in a week, so I'll live in a hotel for a while, which should be fine. After that, I completed some banking procedures and checked into a hotel. I've been planning my revenge on John the whole time, and when I thought of my plan, I got goosebumps. Yes, this is it. There's no other way. Imagining John's shocked face made me almost burst into laughter. Just watch. He won't get away with this so easily. The next day, I immediately set my plan in motion. I felt satisfied after doing something so bold. Life then went on peacefully. Being single again was so much easier without having to cook or do laundry for John. I even regretted not divorcing him earlier. A month later, while enjoying my single life and focusing on work, I received a late-night call. Woken up by the ringtone, I checked the screen, and it was John. I initially ignored it, but he kept calling. I thought it would disrupt my sleep, so I reluctantly answered. Hello? I answered groggily, and I could hear cars and trains in the background on the other end. It seemed he was outside. Annoyed by being woken up and hearing the noise, I waited for John's response.
Emily, you finally answered. What's this about?
John's shouting rang in my ears, instantly waking me up. I knew what he was about to say, but pretended to be clueless, asking, "What are you talking about?"
Don't play dumb. I got a call from the bank yesterday. They suddenly fired me. I'm on my honeymoon in Italy, and this makes no sense.
Honeymoon, huh? Italy would mean a significant time difference. It must still be evening where John is. That's why he called at this hour. Typical of John to not consider my situation. That sounds serious. Good luck with that. Bye. I gave a typical response and was about to hang up, but John shouted,
Hey, wait!
So I sighed and stopped.
I asked why I was fired. Guess what they said? You lost us a major client. And guess which company? Lyrex Corporation, which is the company where you work at.
John explained how he got fired, but I had expected this. After all, I orchestrated everything. In the dim light, I closed my eyes and calmed myself. If I was to exact revenge on John for everything, now was the time. Taking a deep breath, I said, Yes, I know, because I was the one who withdrew our business dealings with your bank. Over the phone, John exclaimed in disbelief.
Huh?
Next to him, I could hear a woman's cooing voice asking, Are you still on the phone? I continued, unbothered. You might not have known, but I am the CEO of Lyrex Corporation.
The CEO?
Yes, I'm the CEO. John thought I was just a regular office worker doing remote work, but in reality, I'm the president who rarely needs to be on site. I left the company I joined as a new graduate after about 3 years and successfully started my own, which I've been running for over a decade. The company grew successfully, and we were able to receive substantial loans from banks. The bank where John worked was the one we had always been dealing with. After separating from John, I decided to repay all the loans we had taken from the bank. The sales representative was taken aback. They would lose the interest they were expecting to receive. The lump sum repayment was an unexpected turn for the bank.
Could you please reconsider?
The sales representative asked me hastily. I replied, "I have one condition. Fire John." The salesperson was flustered and brought their supervisor. The supervisor, who I knew from before as they used to handle Lyrex Corporation's account, asked me what happened.
What suddenly brought this on?
I decided to tell the supervisor everything. Actually, your employee John was having an affair with the daughter of your bank's president. He ridiculed me, refused to pay alimony, and now he's about to remarry that young lady. I couldn't stand it. I learned about John's affair with the president's daughter through the footage from the hidden camera at home. The camera also picked up their conversations, so I knew everything they talked about. Both the salesman and the supervisor turned pale upon hearing my story, trying to maintain business dealings with my company. Probably the story reached the president, who got angry knowing his daughter was involved with a married man. They promised to fire John, so I decided against the lump sum repayment. That's why I still have dealings with John's bank. I knew about John's firing before he even called me. Huh? You're the one being unfair. You pushed all the housework onto me, ridiculed me, and even cheated. And now you're saying I'm the bad one? You can't even think logically. You called yourself an elite employee? Ridiculous. I will definitely demand damages from you. To think you believed you could get damages after cheating? And by the way, I changed the name on the mortgage for the house I was paying for. It's your responsibility now. I unleashed all the stress I had endured onto John over the phone.
What?
John was speechless at my straightforward truth, but then I heard a weaker voice than before.
Please, forgive me. Spare me the damages, and the mortgage too. Rose is pregnant. We can't imagine being in debt with a baby on the way. I've lost my job and don't know what to do. Please, let this slide. Please.
Hearing my pathetic ex-husband beg, I could only sigh. I couldn't believe I endured 2 years with such a man. Forgive? There's nothing to forgive. I want nothing to do with you ever again. The damages are a severance fee. This is all your fault, isn't it? Why should I have to endure any more? I'm done talking to you. You might as well keep running away in a foreign land. Goodbye. Ignoring John's plea to wait, I hung up the phone. He should be grateful I even answered at this late hour. With a sigh, I returned to bed. I probably won't talk to John again. The thought of leading a life unrelated to John brought a sense of relief. Later, my lawyer demanded alimony from John and his mistress after they returned from their overseas trip. John had apparently spent a fortune on the woman and was practically penniless. The mistress, a president's daughter, was scolded and disowned by her father due to this incident. Unable to access her family's wealth, John and his mistress were left with no choice but to go into debt. Even though John claimed to be an elite banker, I heard that he often skipped work, leading to poor sales performance. For his company, this incident served as a perfect reason to fire him. Now John and his mistress are barely getting by with part-time jobs. The woman being pregnant will soon be unable to work. I doubt John can support 3 people on his own. I think they should experience some hardship. Meanwhile, my business is thriving and I've expanded our operations. With a larger loan from the bank John used to work at, my salary has increased. I'm planning to buy my own house, fulfilling my longtime dream of owning a home. Although I lost a husband, I have supportive colleagues and business partners. I'm grateful for my fortunate circumstances and continue to dedicate myself to my work.